Hello and welcome back to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg. I am here for an exciting video today because the Women's Prize for Fiction 2021 was announced earlier today, several hours ago at this point, but this is when I am finally able to sit down, and you can see I had to have a change of location. I haven't used this room to film in a very long time, but if you're a longtime viewer, you might remember it from some of the videos I did in my first year on BookTube. I'm here for a little bit of privacy so I can talk about the Women's Prize for 2021 winner. Let's jump to the winner. I'm going to talk a little bit more about it toward the end of the video, but the winner was Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. And if you watched my Friday Reads video, I don't think you're going to be super surprised because a lot of people were big fans of this book. I think there were maybe one or two detractors, but by and large, a lot of people seemed extremely enthusiastic about this. So I think a lot of people are very happy about the announcement that went out today and really, really excited. Now, as I said, I'm going to talk a little bit more about Piranesi later, but right here up front, I feel like I should talk about the plot of the book a little bit. I have not read this book, but I have a copy, so I am hoping to get to it at some point. So it is about a man named Piranesi who is living in a labyrinth, this really huge labyrinth that I believe it has like an ocean in it and things like this. And he is supposed to be the only person in the labyrinth other than this one dude who he is called the Other, who visits Piranesi twice a week and asks for help with research into a great and secret knowledge. And then as Piranesi explores and moves around the labyrinth, he discovers that there might be someone else in there, and everything seems to start to unravel, or at least that's the impression of it that I get from the book. So that is Piranesi, which was the winner of the 2021 Women's Prize for Fiction. Before we talk a little bit at length about Susanna Clarke and Piranesi itself, let's talk about the other finalists, and let's start with the ones that I don't own. Now, I don't think anybody's going to be surprised that I am pleased that No One Is Talking About This by Patricia Lockwood did not win. I bailed on this book when I tried to read it, and I was not a really big fan. I don't have any plans to pick it back up. Basically, I started it on audio and restarted it 3 or 4 times before I finally gave up, because at first I was concerned it was me not paying attention, and then the 4th time I really was paying attention because I was forcing myself to, and I just realized I did not like the book at all. So I bailed and have not looked back. I am still interested in reading Patricia Lockwood's memoir, which is called Priest Daddy, but I would not revisit this one. And I know that there are people who are a fan of this book. I've heard a lot of people who are not fans as well, kind of similar to my experience. Some people say that the book has a bit of a change or something like a twist halfway through, and that makes the book better. But I've also heard people say that the twist halfway through doesn't improve anything, so it doesn't really matter all that much in the end. Either way, I don't think I will be revisiting No One Is Talking About This anytime soon, and being purely mean, I'm kind of happy it didn't win. There's one other book that I have not read that I don't own, and I would be okay with that because I've heard really good things about it. It sounds interesting to me, but I just really can't get behind No One Is Talking About This. So let's move on to the next one. Let's talk about that one, the other one that I have not read. That one is Unsettled Ground by Claire Fuller. This one, a lot of people tried to change my mind because I feel like there are a lot of books I would try to read before I would get to this one. So it's just sort of hovering in this limbo space where I haven't read it, don't really plan to read it, could potentially be interested in reading it someday, and some people have said I should rethink that. Had it won today, I might have reconsidered at least really spend some time thinking about it and looking at the book a little more closely. As it is, I feel like I'm going to take a pass. With apologies to anyone who tried to change my mind. It sounds like a really interesting book, but there are a lot of other books that I'm hoping to get to by the end of the year, and I feel like if I were to try to seek a copy of this out, I probably wouldn't get to it, and it would just end up falling down my list further. So I'm trying to be realistic and admit to myself that this is something that, even though I find it interesting, there are just other things that I would like to get to first. And those are probably going to take priority. The other one that I don't own is How the One-Armed Sister Sweeps Her House by Cherie Jones. This is something that I did read, and I got it from the library. And I enjoyed a lot of it. The more I think about it, the more I was unsatisfied by the ending. which is sort of an interesting predicament to be in because there's a big contrivance in the beginning of the book, and I think Cherie Jones can get away with it. But there's also a really big contrivance at the end of the book, and I don't think she manages to get away with that one. Contrivances are things that I struggle with as a reader. I don't like feeling like the author is sort of manipulating the plot. I like it when it feels organic. And coincidences happen in life. And like I said, I was willing to go along with the first one, which is a very major coincidence. So the premise of it is that this woman who's living on the beach with an abusive father to her baby is looking for him because she's going into labor. And she eventually realizes she needs help. So she rings on a random doorbell on the beach, and it turns out that is the house that he is currently robbing. And there's an incident that happens because she rings on the doorbell, and the entirety of the book is the ramifications of that. So I can get behind that first coincidence, even though it's kind of wild that she ends up at the house that he is currently robbing. But I can't really get behind the one in the end. I did like the book, but that ending does kind of hamper it a little bit in my appreciation of it, as much as I like it and I would recommend it to you. So let's get to the ones that I do own now. And I don't think it's going to be any surprise to anyone that I am sad Transcendent Kingdom by Gyasi did not win today. I mentioned in my Friday Reads video where I did sort of predictions for the Women's Prize that this was my sentimental vote. I really would have liked to have seen Transcendent Kingdom win, mostly because I really like this book, and I know there are a lot of people who did not enjoy it anywhere near as much as I did. However, I really loved it. And because I loved it, I want to see it succeed. And it just hasn't gotten a lot of other success or awards attention over the last year since it has come out. So I would have really loved to see it get a major award and get some recognition and its own moment in the sun, because I think it really deserves it. And I know there are some people who don't. One follower in particular who really didn't like the dominance of religion in the storyline. To me, I was okay with that because I am not a super religious person. I'm not a very spiritual person either. But I'm always interested in that. And I think the book is very much about the divide between Gifty and her mother in so many ways. But religion is one of the dominant ones. Her mother is a very religious person, and Gifty follows the path of science instead. So it's about religion versus science versus a lot of other things. I've also heard people say it has too many threads. I think it balances all of them really well. It's about science and religion and immigration and depression and strength and resilience and grief and so many different things. I know there are some people who don't like, because it has so many threads, there are so many parts of it that people don't respond to. Like, if you are not somebody who likes books that heavily deal with religion, you're not going to like that part of this book. If you're somebody who does not like books that really deal with science a fair amount, you're probably not going to like this, because Gifty is a science student. She is doing graduate work and studies on mice. If you don't like cruelty to animals, I think the book, I don't like that either. I was able to get by it, but there's a chance you won't either. However, I love this book, and I would have loved to see it win, but I'm okay with the way things turned out. And then we get to The Vanishing Half by Brit, Bennett, and this is another book that I read. This was my prediction for the win, and a lot of people agreed with that. So, oh well, maybe next year. We can be right next year. And I really enjoyed this book. It is about two sisters who grow up in a town that in the South that prizes light skin as much as possible. And one of the sisters decides to pass as a white woman, and the other one does not. And it's about the different directions that their lives take as a result of that decision. I think it's a really fascinating exploration of identity, and it deals with it on multiple light levels, and never feels like a very heavy book either, which I really appreciate, and I think it would have been a worthy winner, but that's not where we are. So that takes us back to Piranesi, which was the winner. I've already talked about the plot. I've mentioned that I haven't read it. Now, part of why I'm so able to get on board with this winning is not just because I've heard good things about it from other people. It's not just because I'm interested in reading it, clearly because I have a copy. It's because of Susanna Clarke's previous books. The Ladies of Grace Adieu, and Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrel. Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrel is the one that she is most known for, other than Piranesi. It is the book that really put her on the map. I think it was her first book, actually. and it is a brick of a book. I read this when it was first published, and I sort of had a love-hate relationship with it while I was reading it because it is so long, and part of me, even now, feels that it's almost too long. It could have used a little bit of editing. However, Susanna Clarke does such a great job with the world building and setting up this magical world and the rules and the history of it that I really did ultimately get swept away with it, even though I did think it was a little bit too long. So if you're unfamiliar, it is the story of two magicians, Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrel. One of them, I believe Jonathan Strange, is this brash younger magician who really wants to get ahead and become the most powerful magician, and to do so, he dabbles in darker arts that most people stay away from. Mr. Norrel is a very established, kind of boring magician, and tries to teach Jonathan Strange, and their relationship forms the basis of the book. It's a fascinating book. The more I've gotten away from reading it, the more I have appreciated it. It is also a book that has footnotes, which is something that I really appreciate. You can see there's a footnote right there, but I believe there are even some points of the book where a footnote will take up an entire page. There are illustrations as well. I do have that little quibble where I think it is a little bit too long. But as I've gotten away from it, I've really just been captured by the magic of it and by Susanna Clarke's imagination. And that is why when Ladies of Grace Adieu came out, I immediately picked it up and read it. Now, this is a collection of short stories, all of which are set in the world of Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrel. And part of me then wonders if Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrel should have been a collection of interconnected short stories, because I think that would have been fascinating. And I really liked the stories in this book. I haven't read them in a really long time. To be honest with you, it's been such a long time that I don't remember a lot of them very well, but it's also a beautiful book and very creative, very clever. It's short, sharp shocks as opposed to Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrel's really long, slow burn. And I really appreciated it a lot. So based on that, I can say I'm happy for Susanna Clarke because I think she's a great writer. I think she has a really vivid, wonderful imagination. She writes books that I don't typically read, but I really enjoyed the first two, so I'm kind of looking forward to getting to Piranesi. I don't know that it would jump into first place in my own personal ranking ahead of Transcendent Kingdom or The Vanishing Half, but I'm looking forward to trying it at some point because I have just liked her other books. And like I said, it's not a genre or type of book that I usually engage with all that much. She is one of the few fantasy writers that I look forward to. And I did not know this until I saw her acceptance speech today. I will put links to the Women's Prize announcement down below, by the way. And I did not know until her speech that Piranesi was written during a long illness for Susanna Clarke. And at points during that illness, she didn't even know if she was going to finish it. She didn't know if it was ever going to make it out to the world. And sometimes it felt like it was just a distraction for her. And that makes it even more interesting to me, actually, because it's just something I really did not know. I don't actually know much of anything about Susanna Clarke and her personal life, but that was really interesting. It certainly grabbed my attention, and it seemed very poignant. She was very emotional when she won, and I think the fact that that was how Piranesi was written would certainly lend itself to that level of emotion. Clearly, this is a book that meant a lot to her for what it helped her get through. So there you go. That's the Women's Prize for 2021. I have not read the winner, but I'm looking forward to getting to it, hopefully sometime soon, probably before the end of the year. I would like to prioritize this one. I have too much going on in September to really fit it in right now, but I want to try to get to it before the end of the year. I would love to hear what you think of the Women's Prize for 2021. Coming off of last year, I am even more excited about the Women's Prize because last year's winner, Hamnet, was one of my favorite reads of the year. And I do think the shortlist was really strong. My dislike of No One Is Talking About This aside, I would have preferred a different book to win if I was making a choice, but then I haven't read this, so I really shouldn't say that all that much. And I'm okay with this winning. I'm totally fine. Susanna Clarke is a writer I can totally get behind based on my previous experiences with her. So I'd love to hear what you think. If you are happy with this, if you're still mad that something didn't make the long list, or from the long list didn't make the short list, if you are a ride or die for the Vanishing Half or Transcendent Kingdom, or God help us all, nobody's talking about this. Let me know why I'm wrong about that book in the comment section down below. I will say, so 2 good years with the Women's Prize. I was not too thrilled with the Women's Prize winner from the year before that, and we're not even going to talk about that right now. We're just going to say I'm happy for the winner 2 years in a row, even though I would have chosen something else personally for this year. So let me know what you think in the comment section down below. If you have thoughts on The Ladies of Grace Adieu or Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrel, I would love to hear that in the comment section down below, because I read these long before I ever had a channel, so I haven't really had a chance to talk to anyone about them. I should reread this at some point, because especially now that I'm thinking about how I don't really remember the stories all that well, I feel like it might be worth another visit. It's just a pretty book too, which, you know, ultimately doesn't mean much, but it's not nothing either. So how long is this book? It is a little over 200 pages. That's really not bad. So I might do a reread of this at some point. October might be a good time to do that. Maybe October, I don't want to commit myself to this, but maybe October would be a good time for a double feature, because I'm getting away from really scary stuff as I get older. So maybe this would be a fun kind of Halloween vibe that wouldn't be a little too extreme. Anyway, again, as I said, let me know what you think of the Women's Prize for 2021 in the comment section down below. As always, I really appreciate your time, and I will be back. Until next time, happy reading.